Hello, everyone. Have you ever had an experience where something you were doing took you back to a very vivid memory? It took you back and you could almost feel like you were there again. I have that experience almost every day, and sometimes multiple times each day. I have what is called a flashbulb memory, and that simply means that my brain takes a small flash shot or snapshot of some event and it stores it in my particularly odd brain in a very simple system, and I can recall these memories. Now, one of the things that this does is it gives me the ability to pull up a great number of just simple things, things that actually happened, the exchanges that took place, the rainy weather, the cold or hot weather, whatever was actually going on is very vivid in my mind during those memories. Well, that's what this channel is going to be about. This channel is going to be about a backwards glance. It's going to be looking back on things that happened, a somewhat nostalgic view of not only my life, but things that I have seen and experienced. And I hope you'll come along and hope you'll enjoy some of the stories that come from these memories, because that's what they primarily do. They give me a very strange ability to weave together stories about these events that took place in the past. And most people, I think, find them somewhat entertaining. And I have had people say, wow, I would have never thought of that until we had this conversation, but I remember it now very well. It's always fun for me. It's something I enjoy doing. As a matter of fact, it was so important to me and so prevalent in my brain, I actually wrote my first book about this situation, and it's called A Backwards Glance. And it's a collection of stories and reflections from my earliest memories back in time and through to today. But this channel is about those reflections and about the sense of what nostalgia does to us. And nostalgia typically brings on very warm and comforting feelings. And it talks about a time that's pleasant that we want to remember. We know we can't go back to it, but there's something very inviting about that memory and feeling those emotions again. Now, also, there are some people who get trapped in backward memories, and those memories aren't pleasant. They're very unpleasant and somewhat, distracting and harmful to them. They get stuck in the cycle of very, very anxiety-ridden memories. Well, our channel isn't totally about that kind of memory. We're going to have some of those because they do exist, and I would be telling you only part of the story if I didn't bring up some of those very tough memories. They're just a part of life. But most of the time, I'm going to talk about things that were fun, that I do remember as being very happy times, emotional sometimes, but also they give me a little bit of a window about what my life was and what my life made me become or created circumstances for me to develop in the way that I did. And that includes family, friends, church, business. Everything that you go through in the world is involved in that personality definition. And I do this all the time. I think of things. And now that we have relocated back to my hometown of Lafayette, I drive around town and I see places, I see buildings, I see street corners, I see things that take me back to those typically very warm but clear and powerful memories. Let me tell you one or two quick stories just here in today's first video. I remember as a small child, we lived in the community of Buffalo, northern part of Chambers County. Beautiful, probably the most beautiful part of the entire county. We lived on a rental farm. So it sounds like, when I say we lived on a farm in this beautiful northern part of the county, it was just idyllic. Well, no, we were dirt poor. And my parents had to work that property as they worked in the textile mill, the cotton mill as it was called, at Avondale Mills here in town, and then came home and farmed. My dad would farm that property and then also hire himself out to do plowing, which he did with a mule. And he actually taught me how to plow with a mule, so I can say that I did that. And just one aside, that mule hated me, never did a thing I said, and always did exactly what my dad commanded. So she got her retribution for his work and took it out on me. That's my recollection. But anyway, he would go and work all day. I mean, he would be at the mill, come home, eat a quick lunch, and disappear until dark working. He'd be gone in the truck with a mule or with plows or with some sort of equipment to help someone. Sometimes he would take me. Other times I would just be at home alone with my sisters because my mother worked the second shift. And they worked that split rotation because it allowed one parent to typically be around the kids in the waking hours. Well, my two sisters were 9 and 11 years older, and having a young brother really disrupted their lives, and they hated me. They did not want anything to do with me early on, is how I remember it. In reality, they loved me dearly and they took great care of me, but they did enjoy tormenting me at times. And this story I'm going to tell you is about an early adventure we had together. My father hadn't gone back from working. My mother had gone into work, and my sisters were washing clothes. We had a round tub washer with a wringer on the top of it, 2 rollers that squeeze water out, help the clothes dry faster. We did not have a dryer. We had a clothesline. So my sisters are washing clothes and I'm there. I'm dressed in, I would assume, one of my father's pajama tops or a shirt, something of that nature that was long and baggy. And I wanted help. And I got a chair from the kitchen table. I pushed it up and I'm being a real pain. But they just let me go because they knew that was probably the only way to deal with me. So I'm helping and I pick up some piece of clothing and I put it in the wringer. And along with that piece of clothing, I put my own shirt in that wringer. And it proceeded to pull fingers, hand, wrist, up to my nearly elbow before my sister Brenda could find something to pop the latch open on that wringer because it was under a lot of pressure with my small child arm stuck in it. I remember the screaming, and I do remember the pain because it was crushing my arm. And I just thought it had absolutely crushed my arm to the point where it had to be just chopped off. That's the childhood memory I have of it. So there's a lot of screaming and yelling, a lot of phone calls. And I do remember my mother coming home from work. That was not fun. There was an awful lot of yelling by her. And then when my dad did come home, because remember, there's no cell phones. He didn't have a phone with him in a field where he could be reached. He discovered my mother's car in the yard when he drove up and knew something was wrong. Boy, I don't believe he whipped me, but he really did light me up for being a pain in the butt. I remember it because we took multiple trips to Dr. Nick Wheeler's office in downtown Lafayette. And there was a series of shots and a series of needles to do things in my arm. But there were no broken bones, just a lot of bruising and a lot of tissue damage maybe, but no long-lasting harm, just fear. And I still have a terrible sense of fear when I even see a wringer washing machine. Now, the other thing I do is I constantly tell my sister Brenda, who is the more spirited person in our family, let me say, every time I see her, I tell her, I remember the day you tried to kill me with the wringer washing machine. She simply just smiles at me and says, yes. So we leave it at that. One other quick story about that place. My sisters one day were trying to listen to records. It seems in my mind they were listening to Beatles songs. They were on the phone with other young ladies from their class. And they were all talking about it. Well, I wanted to be involved. So I annoyed them pretty severely. And one of my sisters, again, Brenda, said, I think we should go outside and play a game. And I'm like, let's go. I mean, I wanted to be outside. That was good. And outside with them because I loved them and I wanted them to play with me. We went outside and my sister Brenda put me up against a chinaberry tree, a big chinaberry tree in the backyard. She goes, okay, I'm going to tie you up with this garden hose, which we of course called a hose pipe. So she proceeded to wrap the hose pipe from my ankles up to about my shoulders. She tied me to the chinaberry tree with a hose pipe. She stepped back about 10, 12, 14 feet and proceeded to pull up from the ground 2 of my dad's hunting knives and a couple of steak knives from our very limited cutlery drawer in the kitchen. I knew what was about to happen. And in my mind, I felt like she was going to kill me. I decided right there she's going to throw those knives and kill me and leave me tied to this tree. The consequences of doing that never crossed her mind. They only crossed my mind. My sister proceeded to take those knives and throw them well above my head. Obviously, she didn't hurt me, and she never has hurt me. Well, almost never has hurt me. She threw those knives at me repeatedly. And, finally my sister Tony is scared and she's like begging her not to do it. So they untied me as I was screaming and crying and immediately went to my parents, both of them, as soon as I could see them. Well, there was retribution, and it just created more anxiety, more hostility toward the younger brother. But to me, anything I could do to get her back for that was worth it. We're going to come back in a couple of days and try to move this situation forward, tell you some more stories about early days in Chambers County and more specifically the city of Lafayette. And I'm going to get into some things about the adults that we knew and tell you some very funny stories, some interesting stories. But the thing I want you to remember is this: even though we are a very small town, we grew up here with a company of heroes. I didn't have 2 parents growing up. I had about 50, because the adults in this town basically watched after all the children in this town. And they were not shy about telling young children doing the wrong thing to stop and to go home. I was told that 1,000 times, probably 1,000 times a month. I want to talk about some of those heroes in future videos that we do. Some really stick out in my mind as absolute heroes because they were heroes in World War II. And something that's very strange about that is I never knew that until I was an adult. Other stories I want to tell you about some of these heroes are the things that they did for me. And it really does touch me. I'm sorry for that. Some of the things that were done for me personally really touched me. These people knew we struggled financially. They knew my parents were cotton mill workers and money was tight. And when things needed to be done for a small child, things just got done. I didn't know how, I didn't know why, because I was too young to even think about it. I just wanted it. Now that I'm older and I reflect back on some of the generosity I received and my family received, it just reaches into my heart and does touch me deeply. And we'll talk about a few of those people and a few of the circumstances. And family as well. My mother is one of 9 children, so I had a plethora of aunts, uncles, and first cousins. And we're going to talk about a lot of those too. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, please drop a comment. Tell me if it reaches you, if it helps you think about some of the things you did in your hometown, your small town or large town. And we'll get together maybe in a week or so, and we'll do another installment of stories from my new YouTube channel, which, by the way, is titled A Backwards Glance, just like the book. That's how creative I am. I have to use the same name. Again, hope you enjoyed it. Take care of yourself, and we will see you again soon. Bye-bye.